We are Fc42 and this is our D3 presentation for the CS64418 project. Our project is the Opioid Crisis Management Dashboard. Listed here are the team members and mentors for the project. We'll first cover a GUI demonstration, followed by our progress on the backend.
Hi there, I'll be demonstrating the front-end web app for the Opioid Crisis Dashboard. This is what we have developed so far. This is an Angular. It's running with Angular materials for the framework, and eventually we're going to have a D3 graph in this value. So before I get into it, all of the data displayed in here is backed by dummy mock data inside the application right now. Though the important point is that once the backend systems are up, we can just switch out the URL redirects and it'll point to our backend data. So you can see here we've got a top header up here. So this is where the user will be able to select different time frames to display age ranges and to be able to sort by gender. There is still some CSS issues here where it's displaying over here instead of directly down, but that's okay. So if the user decides they want to look at a number of disorders, we have some mock ICD-10 disorders. This will eventually be pulled from the database as well. But as you can see here, when the user selects one of these ICD-10 disorders, it will display data that's coming out of our mock data store right now. So we've got dates and counts. If they select a different one, it'll show other dates and counts for it. And these will combine together, so you can have a multi-select when you select a bunch of different ones in here. And if they select none, then it will just display, well, it should display blank. Yeah, so it will display blank. So this will allow the user to kind of create their own filters and display the data that they want to see. Eventually we're going to get the medications in here as well, but we're waiting for the backing data store. That's it. Thank you.
Our deployment plan consists of 4 containers with an internal Docker network, 2 exposed ports, 2 well-known internal ports, and 1 persistent disk volume for data. This demonstrates the ability of our Java data store code to update counters. We've named our counter foobar, and we're testing updating the counts for days, months, years, and even gender. This demonstrates our single gender filter, where we see the resulting values for our month count, which is 91 divided by the month as expected for 10 months, our gender type 0, and our date 1961-02. And we can also interact with multiple gender values, and we have resulting values such as month count at the yellow arrow for 6 months, and for gender types 0 and 1, and for date month starting 1961-02. We are in the early stages of our quality assurance. We will be using Docker in order to interact with containers and test our environment. We'll be interacting with known prepared data as well as unknown data that we pull from the server.
The current outstanding elements can be divided into 4 categories. For the GUI, there's a need to finish the visualizations, graphs, and make everything look pretty. There's still a need to integrate the GUI code into the web server. Next, we need to finalize all container deployments, including the data store. Speaking of the data store, we currently do not have the ontology for codes ready. We'll need to compile or pull this so that the final grouping can happen for visualization purposes. The data store API also needs to be completed for full data loading into Redis. Lastly, there's the QA component, which we'll need to finalize and carry out a unit test structure for the project. The only concern we had was the performance of pulling data from datasets. In particular, we had really bad performance hitting the mimic dataset by a fire. After discussing with our external mentors, we've confirmed that this isn't an issue, as actual production dataset access will be much faster. Here's a quick reminder of the work we've completed for D1 and D2. At this point in time, development and QA phase 1 is complete. Detailed tasks such as data store interface and container setups have been completed and added to the Gantt chart. Detailed tasks for phase 2 of development have been added to the chart for tracking purposes. These include all the outstanding elements previously mentioned. The remaining GUI and backend work is planned to be completed 2 weeks into the next deliverable, while remaining data store work will be completed in phases as the ontology for codes is a higher priority. Unit testing will be done concurrently on various parts of the project. Our next steps are basically to complete all outstanding elements mentioned earlier. We also will begin preparing for the final project handoff.